All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the Planning Commission meeting of September 13th, 2022. And I'm Sherry Davis. I am taking the Planning Commissioner Kogler's place tonight, so you have me to deal with. And at this time, I will, I'll ask Commissioner Covarrubias to please do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Christensen.
Present.
Commissioner Neal.
Here.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Here.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Here.
Commissioner Kogler. Commissioner Gibson. Acting Chairperson Davis.
Here.
The record will reflect that Commissioner Christensen is in attendance remotely. Commissioners Kogler and Gibson are absent, but they did contact us ahead to notify us that they would be gone.
All right, thank you. And at this time, item D on our agenda is staff introductions.
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Katie Bannister, Assistant Planner.
Marcy Reynoso and Ashley Peterson, Administrative Assistant.
Is that it?
Isaac Rosen, Assistant City Attorney.
Hi, Isaac.
Isaac, is there anybody else from the City Attorney's Office on tonight?
Nope, just me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and item E on our agenda are general public comments regarding matters not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone is here in the room tonight who would like to comment, please come up to the podium. But the comments need to be something not on tonight's agenda. All right, Marcy, I don't see anyone coming forward. Is there anyone online?
No callers.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move forward to item F. Are there any agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled?
There are no items to be tabled. Staff is recommending, though, that we switch items number 2 and 3. Item 2 or item 3 is a quicker item than item 2, so we'd recommend we move Paso Tank General Plan Amendment to slot 2 and move the marijuana amendment to slot 3.
All right. And do we need to take any action on that?
If we could just get a concurrence from the commission.
Okay.
Yes.
In terms of the resequencing of our items. Okay, that sounds great. All right, then we will move to agenda item G, which is public hearings. And our first public hearing this evening is time extension 22-01 for vesting tentative parcel map PR 19-0070. In parentheses, P19-0093, PD, okay, it went away. Okay, there it went. PD 1907, OTR 19-26, and TX 22-1. So do we have a staff report?
We do. Thank you, Acting Chairperson Davis. So this is a time extension for a project that was approved a number of years ago, I believe in late 2019, maybe early 2020. So this was actually heard at our last Planning Commission meeting about 3 weeks ago due to some concerns that staff had about the project at the time. So this is a vesting tentative parcel map, a development plan, and an oak tree removal. And then the TEX is for the time extension that we're considering this evening. So this hearing was continued from the August 20th. I'm going to forget if it was 23rd or 24th, but from our previous meeting. So the project, original project was like I said, a vesting tentative parcel map. There was an amendment to the original plan development and then that oak tree removal. Here is a look at the location of the site. This is at 26th and Spring Street. You can see in the red square, the property extent, and then that yellow triangle, or excuse me, star gives us an idea of where we're looking. So here is a quick look at a perspective of what is proposed for the project. The front building is commercial uses on the ground floor with, I believe it's 9 apartments upstairs, and then the rear building is 18 apartment units. So here's a look at the site plan. So building A has begun to be constructed. Building B would be in the future. Currently, the Moose Lodge is located in this location, but will eventually be removed and a new residential building put at the rear. And then as the number of applications would imply, there is a subdivision proposed. It would subdivide the property east and west where that red line is shown on the screen. So I've already kind of gone through this, 4,000 square feet of commercial space, 9 bedrooms and, 9 apartments in the front unit, front building. Phase 2 would be 18 one-bedroom units, and this project does include an affordable housing density bonus. So the staff was concerned about progress. The construction of the project did kind of stop about a year ago, but it has began again. These photos were taken actually today. The staff report included some photos from about a week ago, and we're seeing additional progress. We are seeing the building is almost entirely wrapped. There's actually windows being installed. The gentleman on the roof was working on roof decking, so we are seeing a lot of progress. There was also additional materials staged in the ground floor. There's some drywall ready to go, and so we're seeing a lot of progress. The building department is satisfied with progress. They have done several inspections and are seeing good work going on out at the site. I've got some additional photos. This is from looking from 26th Street to the west, and on Spring Street, looking kind of southeast. So you can see almost the entire building is wrapped to get it winterized. I guess the roof decking that they're installing right now is actually waterproof, so that'll waterproof the roof. And then they've still got that west-facing elevation to wrap, but that'll be happening in the next week or so. So we did get an updated timeline. It didn't. The applicant was not able to completely update the Gantt chart that you see at the bottom. So that's the original schedule that was given to us there at the bottom. But they did provide a new timeline that you see there at the top. They are resheeting and re-roofing. That's in process. I did see that happening today. They're completing the tie-back and window install this week, and we'll be working on the roof in October and the interiors through May. They'll be doing site work starting in February and anticipated completion in June of next year. As I said, staff is satisfied with the progress we are seeing on the site. The Planning Commission has some options. The first, which is staff's recommendation, would be to approve a one-year time extension. This would take us to this coming February. It would give the Planning Commission another opportunity to check on progress and make sure things stay on track. Another option would be to grant a 2-year time extension. We are getting not that far from February, so the Planning Commission could give this project 2 years, which would extend the map, but it would also extend the development plan, which has a slightly different expiration date because there was an amendment approved for phase 2. And then, of course, the Planning Commission has the option to amend or modify any of the above noted options. But as I said, staff does recommend option 1, just that 1-year time extension, but certainly the 2-year time extension is a reasonable request as well. And that does conclude staff's report.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And I'll bring it back to commission to see if you have any questions of staff. I'll start with you, Ty, online. Do you have any questions?
Well, first off, I don't see any of the presentation on my screen. So I did listen very well, and I have a copy here on my laptop, but I can't see anything on the presentation on my screen. So I don't know if I need to leave and then come back in.
We're working on that, Ty. We'll have it up in a minute.
Okay. Okay. All right. No worries. I just want to make sure you guys knew that. I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Okay. Ty, we'll come back to you then. They're working on it here. I'll go over here to Commissioner Neal. Do you have any questions for staff?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
I have a question. If we approve the extension for 1 year, it would expire prior to completion of the project, so we'd be back here again in February. So is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then my other question is on the second, the phase 2. Could you talk a little about that since it hasn't started? Where is that in the approval process?
Sure. I didn't look at that recently. I believe that they did submit a first round of building permits for like a first plan check for that, but I'd have to double check. I'm not sure.
When we go to public hearing, maybe the applicant. All right, Commissioner Covarrubias, questions?
I do. Katie, the building inspector, I know the last time we were here, we all had a concern about the quality of the building since it sat so long. Was there a formal report done by the building inspector?
Yes, the applicant did submit reports from an outside inspector, a special inspector who went and did test the structural integrity of the sheer plywood that was put on the building. Obviously, it went through a winter. Luckily, it wasn't a very wet winter. They are putting a second layer of plywood on, or a second layer of sheeting on the roof, but the wall sheeting is adequate for the structural need of the building.
Okay, perfect. So just out of curiosity, with the 1 year extension takes us to February, 2 year takes us longer. Just curious, staff's recommending 1 year, why not 2?
It's a fairly weak recommendation. If Planning Commission is satisfied with progress, you could certainly approve a 2-year time extension. That's the applicant's preference. We are coming close to February. The idea was just to give Planning Commission another opportunity to see progress in February, but certainly a 2-year time extension is not an unreasonable request.
Because I would assume staff's going to do its normal inspections, make sure the progress is going forward as planned, and if something changes, we would be notified anyways.
Unless I don't know that the Planning Commission would necessarily get notification. We certainly can have a dialogue, but typically when building permits are going slowly, we don't tend to notify the Planning Commission. But if that's your desire, you could certainly make that request of us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll go back to Commissioner Christensen. Can you see it now, Ty?
No, but that's okay. Like I said, I have a copy here. I just,
Okay.
For the rest of the thing. But Rob, Commissioner Covarrubias asked some questions that I was going to ask in regards to where they're at in the process. So I appreciate that, Robert. So I'm good right now. I'm good with no questions.
Okay, and so am I. So at this time, if we don't have any further questions of staff, I will open up the public hearing. And maybe the applicant would like to speak first, perhaps? Do you know if the applicant is here wanting to speak?
Mr. Hamilton, it's your feel free to speak.
Okay. Yes, a couple comments. So, and I assume you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So the rear building, there was a question in regards to the rear building. It has not been submitted for plan check yet. We've been working with the architect and the engineers to kind of work through some of the design issues of the rear building. So it's at about 95% status at the moment. So it will be submitted probably by the end of the month or in the middle part of November. So the rear building will go in for plan check at that time. We're also, the Moose Lodge, the current tenant, we've been working with them all through COVID, because obviously it shut them down for some period of time. And so we've been not trying to kick them out because we want them to find a new place and continue to be successful. So we haven't been rushing through the rear building, hoping that they'll find a new place. They sounded like they found a new place. It sounds like maybe that's fallen through or kind of, so we're trying to be cognizant of them as an organization as well, trying to find them a place. So, but everything's all hands on deck at the moment, and I'm very happy with our progress so far. And to us, I'm fine if you'd like us to come back in February. I'm more than happy to. If you want to grant a 2-year extension, that's fine as well. From now on, there's no interruptions because we want to get this thing done. So.
Okay, do we have any questions for him while he's at the microphone? I don't see any questions from the commission. So at this time, I'll see if there are any other members of the general public who would like to comment on this item. Are there any people in the...
No callers.
No callers queued up. Okay, so I don't see anybody else to comment. Then I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any discussion of this matter.
I'd like to make a motion.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to move to approve draft resolution A to grant a 1-year time extension for vesting tentative map, parcel map PR 190070 to February 4th, 2020.
All right, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Previous. And any discussion on that? Hearing none, then I will call for the vote.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Aye.
Chairperson Davis?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, and thank you and good luck. I am personally putting on a roof at this time, so I wish you well. I do want rain, but let's get our roof on first. So we will move next to item 3 and then come back to the cannabis discussion. So we'll move to public hearing 3, general plan amendment, rezone, specific plan amendment, and conditional use permit amendment for Paso Robles tank, P21-0108. So could we have a staff report, please?
Thank you. This is Assistant Planner Bannister again. So this is a laundry list of planning entitlements for a relatively modest project. So let's jump in and see what we've got here. So here is the location. Ironically, this is also on 26th Street, just east of Spring. You can see the moose lodge there, the current moose lodge, and it doesn't show the new construction, but just right around just across the street from the apartment project we just discussed is Paso Robles Tank. So this orange line outlines the existing facility for Paso Robles Tank. The entitlements for a tank manufacturer go back to at least the 1980s at this site. The staff report does include a number of amendments that have been processed over time, but at this point in time, this is the extent of the Paso Robles Tank facility. So there is kind of an existing storage yard. There's a number of areas on the property where there's storage, but kind of there's a grade change between the lower sort of main facility and then the upper area where there's really just storage and fabrication of small parts. So these green arrows are indicating where that grade change occurs. And so there's no internal circulation between the lower, larger facility and the sort of smaller storage area that's closer to Spring Street. The property that's in question is here now in red. There's an existing single-family residence on this site, and the applicant has applied to have that building demolished so that they can expand the storage yard that's there on that upper portion of the campus. There are some existing residences in proximity, so just at the end of the alley, at that northeast end of the alley, there is one remaining single-family residence off of the alley. There are 4 single-family residences on Spring Street, or residences, I should say, and then there is also one across the street on 26th Street, and I should have put it in blue, but there's also one on the site in that little corner. I don't know, I could do it with on the screen up above. I'm sorry, Ty, you won't be able to see that there is also a residence at the corner of the upper lot. Okay, so here is a look at 26th Street looking down at the Paso Robles tank facility. Obviously some on-site parking. It is an industrial type area. That's 26th Street. So here is a look at the existing facility. You can see some of the metal buildings off on that left photo, and then that grade change that I mentioned is here in the left photo. So we're still looking at kind of the main facility there in these 2 images, and then off to the left would be the storage area and the area where we're discussing this evening. So here is the existing site plan. So again, that orange line shows us the existing facility. Here's some labels of where items are located. So the large crane building is kind of at the middle of the campus. There's some offices, warehouses, and brake sheds and so forth, and then a lot of storage of both materials and finished product. Up on the top of the hill, they do have a fabrication shop that's located there behind the existing single-family residence. And then in red, you see that there is the new area that the company would like to bring into the campus and I just wanted to say circle the square, but that's not the right phrase. They're, kind of get a full rectangle around for their facility. So there, in green, there is that grade change. There are a number of trees and some vegetation there that stabilize that slope, and there's no connection internally between the lower part of the campus and the upper. And I think I've already gone through most of this. This is kind of a fabrication shop and storage area there in orange. And now moving on. So on the left, we see the existing site plan of what's going on the top of the hill. We're no longer looking at the main part of the campus. And then on the right is what is proposed, how that upper area is proposed to be used. So on the left here, here's some of the existing uses, that single family residence at the top of the screen, small parts fabrication, and then they've got a maintenance building. There is a single family residence right off of 26th Street, and that is proposed to remain on the property. And then off to the, in red is that single family residence. There is an existing fence here where the blue line is that would actually be removed, and so that circulation can occur internally on this kind of uphill part of the project or of the campus. There are a number of C-train storage containers on the property. Most of these would be moved to the rear of the property. It would open up a big kind of lay down both for products and materials off on that proposed site. There are also now in yellow some additional storage buildings, storage sheds and so forth there, and those would actually remain right behind that residence that's to remain. And then, as I said, that kind of area that opens up would be used to lay down both products and materials for the business. So here is a look at 26th Street. I actually took this picture with the intent of showing kind of how the Paso Robles tank is viewed from Spring. It's really not very visible for such a large facility and a large industrial facility. Ironically, there on the right is the Moose Lodge building. So went out to take pictures and was able to kill two birds with one stone in the trip. So you can see that's the existing single-family residence there. There is a gap in the frontage improvements that it's conditioned to be filled in, and we'll talk about that as we move forward with the upcoming slides. So this is a look down the alley. On the left, you see we're standing in 26th Street looking down the alley. It is an improved alley. There is a chain link fence with slats along that alley. The existing facility does have razor wire at the top of the fence. And then in that bigger picture on the right, you can start to see the first building that you see past the slat fence is the building that would be removed. And then beyond that, there is a single family residence that would remain. So there are conditions of approval that would require this sort of open fence for slats to be added to that fence, or a new fence with slats to be added to screen the proposed storage that would be put on this site. This is a look at the residence that would be demolished. The city planner, Darren Nash, and I did go out and visit on the site. This building is not in good condition, and so it's not a candidate to be salvaged, and it is not the intent of the applicant to maintain, to retain it. So this is in the Uptown Town Center specific plan. There's some discussion in the staff report that when the Uptown Town Center specific plan was adopted back in 2011, this whole neighborhood was actually originally shown to be zoned for residential uses. Both the applicant and other members of the public did comment, and the city council specifically zoned this area as a Riverside corridor to allow Paso Robles tank and the other manufacturing and sort of industrial users in this neighborhood to continue. In the Riverside corridor, manufacturing uses, including sheet metal, machine shops, and welding, is an allowed use. So the Paso Robles tank facility is allowed. The outdoor storage is allowed as an accessory use in the Riverside corridor, but it does require a conditional use permit if public improvements are incomplete for the site. The current zoning on the property with the residence is problematic because it's the T4F zoning district, where a manufacturing use and its accessory storage would not be allowed. And so that's a good deal of why we're here this evening, is to get the zoning changed to allow what the applicant would like to do. But in addition, a conditional use permit is required to make sure we get those public improvements, and then also to require screening of the outdoor storage, and to get some landscaping to screen the storage as well. So as we saw in the images, there is some screening fences around most of the facility. The existing fences are about 6 feet tall. The applicant has not requested taller fences, but the Planning Commission can approve taller fences up to 8 feet. There are no conditions requiring that or requesting that, but just for the Planning Commission's information. And then the Uptown Town Center specific plan does specifically call out razor wire as an approved use if the Planning Commission does allow it in the Riverside corridor. So that is certainly something that could be approved by the Planning Commission as well. So jumping into the request. So first is that the general plan land use designation does not support what is proposed on this site. So as you can see, there is a change in land use designation. The existing portion of the Paso Robles tank facility, and then there's some mini storages and other industrial users in the vicinity. They all have a general plan land use designation of industrial. That's what the M stands for, is industrial. And then the pink areas are a mixed use zoning district. So the residential or mixed use project that we looked at just before this, and then all along this area, it is a mixed use zone where both residential and limited commercial uses are allowed, but not manufacturing type uses. So the proposal would be to change the general plan land use designation of the lot that has the red star on it there. Similarly, the zoning, as I mentioned, the zoning is T4F. Corresponds with the general plan designation, and then the Riverside corridor is what the existing facility, the existing Paso Robles tank facility is zoned. So again, the property there with the red star would be proposed to be changed to Riverside corridor from the T4F zoning district. In addition, there is a request to amend the conditional use permit to allow that outdoor storage. So as I said, the main reason why a conditional use permit is needed here is because the site, the frontage of this storage area, the house that's there, the house is actually numbered 727 26th Street. It does not have frontage improvements, and so those would be a condition of approval that is proposed in the draft resolution this evening. Curb gutter and sidewalk would be required to be installed there on the kind of left picture. I've cobbled two pictures there together, so for left and right there. So on the right, there is existing frontage improvements, curb gutter and sidewalk. There is, actually, I think I've got some animations. Yeah, so orange circle shows where frontage improvements are needed. The green circle shows where landscaping would be required along 26th Street. And then for the Planning Commission's consideration, there is razor wire also on the front along 26th Street. The applicant does have security concerns. Obviously, they've put razor wire for a reason, but this is right along 26th Street. So there's no specific conditions of approval requiring its removal, but something the Planning Commission might want to consider. We do have the applicant and some representatives here this evening, and I'm sure they can explain the importance of that razor wire, but obviously it's not the most attractive feature in town. But this is not a highly visible site either, so something to consider. So the proposed conditions, there are additional conditions, but these are kind of I guess the meatiest. So the old conditions of previous approvals would remain in effect. There's some of the older approvals in the staff report that started in the 80s. There were some amendments in the 90s and even I think in the early 2000s. The condition number 7 would require a screening fence on the alley for the new lot. Today, it's an open fence. So they'd need to add some slats or something to screen that area. These are things we've mostly I've already discussed. So number 10 is that landscaping on 26th Street would be installed, including some street trees, and then the circulation on the site, the vehicle circulation. There is a fence on the new lot, which is it's actually addressed 727 and a half 26th Street. There is a gate back there, but the condition is that sort of typical circulation on the site would come from 26th Street. So the cars using that back storage area would come from the access on 26th Street, and so that the alley would not there would not be heavy trucks and a lot of traffic on that alley because it's not designed for manufacturing type traffic. So typical circulation would come from 26th Street. The 14th condition is that that rear lot, the new lot, would only be used for storage. It would not be used for manufacturing type uses. There is a residence just to the north of it. Storage storage, staff feels storage could be compatible, but more intense uses probably are not appropriate right adjacent to that house. And then, as I said, number 17 would require frontage improvements on 26th Street. So the project is not exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act because of the general plan and zoning amendments. And so a negative declaration was prepared for the project and circulated between August 24th and today, actually. So today was the end of that circulation period. No mitigation measures were proposed as a part of that environmental document. So we're just looking at the conditions of approval that we've already gone through. The Planning Commission, so this is actually a recommendation to the City Council, who has to ultimately amend the general plan and the rezoning of the property. So the findings for recommending these changes, first of all, there's 4 resolutions, and so the first resolution is related to the environmental document, but the second and third resolutions are related to the general plan amendment and the rezone. And the conditions, the findings in those resolutions basically are that the general plan amendment and the rezone are consistent with the goals and the policies of the general plan. So if you approve those resolutions, you would be making those findings. And then for the conditional use permit, the findings that are required is that the project is not detrimental to the welfare of the neighborhood, nor to the to nearby properties and improvements, that the project is not detrimental to the city's efforts to revitalize the downtown, and that it's compatible with the goals and policies of the Uptown Town Center specific plan. As I said, this is a recommendation to the City Council. The Planning Commission, as always, has options. The first would be to approve those 4 resolutions, the first being to certify the negative declaration, that CEQA document. The second resolution would be to approve the general plan amendment. The third resolution is for the rezone and specific plan amendment. And finally, the fourth resolution, where most of the conditions reside, would be to amend that conditional use permit to allow the expansion of the outdoor storage use. The Planning Commission also could amend and adopt the draft resolutions with those amendments. If the Planning Commission needs more information, you could refer it back to staff for that additional analysis. And certainly the Planning Commission could deny the request, any of those resolutions, if you feel that you can't make any of the required findings. Staff is recommending that you approve the project. Here's a list of those resolutions again. That does conclude staff's report. I stole an image off of the Paso Robles tank off the internet. Here's an aerial looking down at their existing facility. Obviously an industrial site, but not kept in a it's an orderly facility. So just wanted to show that image. That does conclude staff's report.
Thank you, Katie. That was a great report. Appreciate it. At this time, I'll bring it back to the commission. Do you have any questions of staff? I'll start here on my left. Commissioner.
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick questions. Let me address first, I'm just curious, the southwest corner, the house, Katie, that's on the corner there, is that owned by the applicant?
Yes, and it's actually on the same property with some of the storage area, but yes, it's under the common ownership with the rest of the facility.
Okay, perfect. I noticed that there was a gate on the home that's being demolished. There seemed to be some kind of wheel fence gate, something that opens, so that's going to be removed and replaced with.
So the conditions would not require it to be removed. Staff could imagine, exceptional situations where the applicant needs some additional space, needs to occasionally go through that gate, and that would be acceptable. It's just the kind of day-to-day traffic should not be coming from the alley. The Planning Commission could certainly change that condition to require the gate to be removed. That's not staff's recommendation.
And the only reason I asked was because of the access. So access will only come from 26th Street then? That
is how the project is conditioned. And in speaking to the applicant, they are amenable to that they would come from 26th Street.
Okay. The barbed wire, the razor fencing along the top, does that go all the way around the property?
I'm most familiar with kind of the uphill portion of the site, and it certainly goes around the existing facility up there, although not around that single-family residence. It goes around kind of behind it and to the side. I'm not sure how the larger facility, but we do have the applicant with us this evening who could address that.
Okay. Yeah, we can get that addressed later. And then my last question, at least for now, is the fencing, the landscaping, that was all of that was mentioned. we're not here to approve any of that at this time, right? Because all we're approving is the rezoning.
So you are also recommending approval of the conditional use permit. Staff's recommendation is that the applicant be allowed to bring a landscape plan and frontage improvement plan and allow staff to approve it. But certainly the planning commission could change that condition. If you would like to review that landscaping plan, that you could certainly do that.
Okay.
Or possibly the DRC is another option.
Oh, okay. Thanks you for clarifying that. Okay, no other questions.
Okay. Commissioner Jorgensen. Commissioner Neal.
I was on DRC and I don't have any questions.
And Commissioner Christensen online. Any questions?
Thank you, Katie. Great presentation. Just a kind of a benign question. I noticed the attachments from previous CUPs attached to the submission there. Can you tell me, I found it curious that in there it noted that the CUP would be brought forward to the Planning Commission annually is what I seem to have read. And this is more, like I said, of a benign question. Has there been any time that we know of that they have maybe abused that CUP or had any complaints against that CUP? Anything that you know of?
No, it does appear, looking at archives back in the 80s and probably before, there was a conditional or some sort of a project review committee of the Planning Commission that seemed to review projects on an annual basis. That seemed to be a typical condition. That has not been the practice of the city for some time. And no, we do not receive complaints about the facility, the operation of this facility.
Great. Yeah, thank you. That answers it. I know we don't do that procedure anymore, but I was just wondering if there was anything in the archives about them violating it, but it sounds to me like it wasn't. And then for the landscape plan, can you go back to the photo of the front where the house and the gate is? Where you took a shot there of the entrance into this portion of the yard. Yeah, right there. So where the red fencing portion is, that they're going to have a landscape plan for that. Is that correct?
Yes, the intent is that sort of in front of this upper storage area, which is a little bit more visible from Spring and from 26, that we would get landscaping in front of that chain link fence with the slats, and then of course in front of the residence as well.
Great. All right. That's all my questions. Thank you so much.
All right, and I do have just one question. Katie, could you tell me about the notifications to the residents in the area?
So we did send notices to all property owners and residents within 300 feet of the property, which would include that neighbor at the end of the alley. And we did not receive any emails or correspondence from any of those folks. The notice also did go in the newspaper. I know that doesn't always get noticed, or people don't tend to see it as much, but the neighbors did receive a mail notice.
Okay. There aren't any other questions for staff this time. I'll open up the hearing. And so the public hearing is now open. Would the applicant like to take up?
So the applicant is in the audience and doesn't appear to be moving to the to the dais.
Yeah, could you maybe? It does go all the way. And yeah, can you come up to the podium, please? Yeah, and state your name.
If you could come up to the podium. If you could come up to the podium, that way the folks online are able to hear as well.
Yeah, we'd
Thank
like
you.
to hear. And introduce yourself, please.
Steve Sankey, architect for the client. The one thing that, with reference to the razor wires, the entire east boundary of the property is on the railroad tracks. You get a lot of transient action down there. Very exposed or accessible to people that don't belong on the property. So the continuity of that continuing up the hill is justification for the security aspect of it.
Okay, thank you for anything else you'd like to add? anything else you'd like to add for the project?
No, there was a reference to the gate on the alley. I think it's wise to retain that as an emergency access use, public safety, at some point if it should become necessary, but it's never an intention on the client's part to use it as access.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And are there any members of the general public or any other on the applicant's team? Any members from the general public who'd like to comment here or anyone online?
No callers.
Okay. Then I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission and for discussion. Where should we start? Commissioner?
Commissioner, it's Isaac Rosen. I just wanted to make a note for the record as well that part of the recommendation to the City Council, obviously this is all going up for their final approval. So the Commission's making a recommendation, and I would just reference on the record that the single family home being demolished isn't going to impact the city's housing element sites inventory or reduce city's ability to meet its RENA in our adopted housing element. So I just wanted to state that on the record.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Isaac. So Commissioner Neal, no comments at this time? Commissioner Jorgensen?
I do have a question of staff. If this is approved as proposed and the landscape plan for 26th Street comes back to DRC or staff or however that's decided, does that include the fencing? I'm unclear on the status of the existing fencing along 26 and also along the proposed site. I don't understand what we're approving tonight.
Sure. So the applicant has applied for a demolition permit for that residence, and so that would be an opportunity for the city to do inspections and to make sure that the fence has been addressed, that the screening does occur, and then that the landscaping does occur. So what you're approving is a requirement that those improvements occur before storage can happen on the subject lot 727.5 26.
Okay, and then one of the proposed requirements is the frontage improvements on 26 on the upper level, correct?
That's correct.
And so does that include the fence, or is the fence considered existing and the new landscape would go in front of it?
So the way the condition is currently written, they would be allowed to retain that fence and just add landscaping. If the Planning Commission would like to see new fencing, they could certainly amend the conditions of approval.
All right.
Last question, Katie, just thought of it. Emergency services, do they need to be involved in this at all with the changes?
So Randy Harris did review, the fire marshal, did review the site plan when it was first submitted and did not voice any concerns.
Okay, perfect.
And Commissioner Christensen online. Any comments?
Yeah, I don't really have any questions for the applicant. It seems like this is probably a good idea to make this happen. That alleyway, I've been back there many times. I'm not even sure if the house at the far end was occupied for many years. I know the church there looked to acquire it some years back, but I think as long as that the city is adamant about keeping the traffic coming in off of 26th Street, and if staff is going to approve the landscape plan thoroughly, then I would be fine with this.
As would I. The company has been in business for a long time, and I'd like to see this happen. So I will entertain a motion from the Commission, if anyone is willing to do so.
Chairperson Davis, I'd like to make a motion,
All
or
right.
several of them.
Okay.
I'd like to move approving draft resolution A, attachment 4, recommending the City Council certify negative declaration SCH 2022080525.
All right. I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Commissioner Ferguson is the second. Any discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Davis.
Aye.
Resolution A passes 5-0.
All right, I'll entertain another motion. Should it be one?
I'd like to move approval of draft resolution B, attachment 5, recommending the city council approve general plan amendment 21-01 to change the land use designation for 727.5 26th Street from mixed use MU12 to industrial M.
And do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second from Christensen. And any discussion on the matter? Hearing none, let's vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Aye.
Chairperson Davis.
Aye.
Resolution B passes 5-0.
And I'll entertain another motion on the draft resolution C. Should there be one?
I would like to make a motion approving draft resolution C, recommending the city council adopt ordinance to be numbered later for rezone 21-02 and specific plan amendment 21-01 to rezone the property at 727.5 26th Street from T4F to Riverside Corridor RSC.
All right, and do I have a second for that motion?
I will second it and correct it at specific plan amendment 22-01.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the matter? I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Davis.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
And we have draft resolution D. Should there be a motion? I'll entertain it now.
And I'll give it a whirl one last time. I'd like to move approval of draft resolution D, recommending the city council approve amendment 22-01 to conditional use permit 83-019 to expand the Paso Robles tank facility.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Covarrubias. And any discussion on the matter? I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Davis.
Aye.
Resolution D passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Good luck. Moving forward on our agenda this evening, we'll go back to item 2 in the public hearing and find that description here. It is a zoning text amendment to chapter 21.33 of title 21. And do I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Warren Fraze, Community Development Director. So tonight we will be talking about commercial cannabis delivery regulations in town. Just want to start with just a little bit of clarification. There have been a number of workshops with the city over the summer talking about changes to overall city cannabis and marijuana policies, including the possibility of storefront retail. That is not what we're talking about tonight. So that is a separate issue that's on a separate track that will come back to the Planning Commission in the future, but that process is just beginning. What we're talking about tonight is making a rather minor change to our existing code sections that deal with medical marijuana regulations. So that's all we're talking about. Currently, the city allows for medical marijuana to be delivered within the town, which is consistent with state law. And we also allow offices that operate medical marijuana delivery operations to be established by CUP in certain districts. So really what we're talking about tonight is just some minor changes to allow some changes to what can be delivered in town. So that's what we're talking about tonight. Anything beyond that will be part of future discussions. So is that clear to everyone? Okay. All right. Moving on then. Okay, so just background-wise, I'm not going to summarize this table other than to point out in the last 7 or so years, there has been significant changes to marijuana and cannabis rules at both the state level as well as the city. Currently, like I said, we do allow medical marijuana delivery offices to be established in town. And we're currently having the council look into the possibility of a broader cannabis ordinance change throughout the community. So that's just a little bit of background. So what we're talking about tonight is actually redefining medical marijuana to call it in, to get rid of that term and basically reclassify it as commercial cannabis deliveries. So right now, medical marijuana requires a prescription by the user. What we're talking about basically is commercial cannabis, which is the adult use or recreational, that isn't prescription related, that would be delivered the same way that the medical marijuana currently is. So if this draft ordinance is approved and the commission does not approve the ordinance, so tonight the commission is considering this item and you make a recommendation to the city council. So for everybody's information in the audience, regardless of the commission's decision or recommendation tonight, it requires additional council hearings before any of this will be set in place. So no changes go into effect tonight, regardless of whatever decisions are recommended tonight. So just want everybody to keep that in mind. But if this ordinance is ultimately approved by the city council, we do have 2 existing medical marijuana delivery CUPs in town. They're both on Black Oak. One is the Dubs building next to the card room, and then the old McDonald's, the Attack Room building. That is the Kinfolk dispensary delivery service. Both those currently have CUPs. Those CUPs are currently limited to only delivering medical marijuana. This ordinance change would then automatically change the definition of those CUPs to also allow them commercial cannabis deliveries. And that was actually direction that the city council provided this summer to staff, which is the reason this item is before the planning commission at this point. Okay, so in terms of the changes in the ordinance, if you look at the changes, they're fairly significant when you look at the strike through and underline version. Most of that is really dealing with just kind of legal clarification of the changes that have happened in state law since we've switched basically from medical marijuana to adult use marijuana. So most of it is kind of legal cleanup. But in terms of what the actual changes are that's going to affect how things operate in town, the basic summary is there's still a requirement for a CUP granted by the Planning Commission for any new offices. So the 2 existing ones basically would be allowed to expand, but anybody in the future would still need to get a CUP. That's how the current ordinance works, so there's no change there. So that stays the same. The only places you can get a CUP for these cannabis delivery offices is in the Riverside Corridor or the C3 Commercial Light Industrial District. So there's no changes to the districts that this would be allowed in. There is a change to the findings. So when and if a new CUP comes through the process, there are 4 new findings that the Planning Commission would have to make to approve a new CUP. So as I mentioned, there's no changes to the zones where these offices can be established. The Riverside Corridor is the purple area, and the C3 is kind of the pink area out here on Golden Hill. The purple area here is 101. This is basically along the railroad tracks in town. Okay, there are some new changes that will affect how commercial cannabis is delivered in town, and this would apply not only to the offices that are operating out of the city, but outside delivery services that are also operating within the city. So there is a requirement that all state and local taxes be paid by all delivery services. The delivery services now have time limits between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. under this new ordinance. And there's also a requirement that there's business licenses for both operators located within the city or outside the city. And then these are more just clarifications, and this is kind of the bulk of the underlying changes you see. So the term marijuana is being changed globally throughout the ordinance to now be cannabis. There are some references to other title sections, revenue and finance, that are being updated. Riverside Corridor was referred to as the RC zone, but that's incorrect. So it's the RSC zone. So that's a global change that we're making. And then there's just a lot of kind of typo kind of changes and clarifications that have been added. So this, in terms of the environmental process, would be exempt from any CEQA review process. So as I mentioned, your action tonight is to make a recommendation to the City Council. There's three options. Staff is recommending option one, which is to approve draft resolution A. That would recommend approval of this zoning change to the City Council as outlined and attached to the resolution. Option two would be to recommend an alternate to the council, and you could do that by making amendments to Resolution A. You could also recommend denial to the City Council. And your third option would be refer it back to staff for additional analysis. And that'll conclude staff's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frace. At this time, I'd like to ask the commissioners if they have any questions. I'm going to start with Commissioner Christensen online. Have any questions, Ty?
Thank you. Yeah, I know this is a funny one, Warren, but can I ask what's the push to change from marijuana to cannabis? I know it just seems to be so important as part of this. Was there some directive from the City Council for that?
It's actually a change that's happened at the state level. So I think when it was an illegal drug, it was commonly referred to as marijuana. And since the states basically recognize it as a legal drug, all the state agencies now refer to it and regulate it as cannabis.
Okay, thank you. Well, okay, that's all I have for my questions. Thank you.
All right, then I will go to next Commissioner Neal.
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Mr. Frace, would you go back to the slide on the future CUPs? Could you talk through the new required findings? What does that mean? Like, for example, over concentration, what does that mean? How are these measured or calculated at the time? When the time comes, how are these? They seem really big.
So, Isaac, would you want to weigh in on exactly kind of how these findings would be applied in a future hearing?
Sure. Yeah, I think the easiest way to think of it is not dissimilar to how the local decision makers would think of a conditional use permit finding anyway. So when we have to make a CUP outside of the cannabis space, the commission is asked to make subjective sort of findings based on these type of criteria. And that's true for conditional use permits and a whole host of other sort of types of entitlements. So the idea is that the Planning Commission serves as the review authority in this instance and will evaluate those kind of on a case-by-case basis based on how they would any other CUP, which is permissible under the relevant state law.
So we don't really have a definition for any of them.
I think in general, the findings typically for commission actions are rather general, which gives latitude to the commission to make decisions. They're basically prompts to consider as you go through your decision-making process.
Okay. I listened to the cannabis workshop from a couple of weeks ago. I listened to the recording of it. And one of the slide, excuse me, slides that was presented was from a website called Weed Maps. So I looked up Weed Maps today, and it lists 6 Paso Robles located, not serving, but located medical and recreational delivery services. So I'm just wondering, what's the enforcement for all this? How do we collect this tax money anyway? I mean, if someone's coming from another location, for example, into town, if they're coming from, one of our 2 approved CUP providers, that's pretty clear. But if somebody's coming from out of town, making deliveries, turning around and going home, how is any of this enforced?
I think that's
For
in
business
general,
licenses and tax collection.
been a challenge with cannabis delivery services, and it's not unique to the city. I think that's an issue throughout the state. I do think that's some of the purpose of these changes, is to better clarify what the rules are so that we will be in a better spot to enforce it. I do think there's still discussions, debates going on at a state level about actually how the allocation of taxes happen between cities, county, and state. So I think that is still an issue that's, being resolved at multiple levels.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll go to Commissioner.
Thank you. So Warren, I'm going to expand on it because it was actually one of my questions, but I think I have another twist to it. So we have 2 zonings. We have the Riverside Corridor, we have the C3 light industrial areas. I would assume if somebody's going to open up a brick and mortar delivery service in one of those 2 corridors or areas, that is subject to availability of space, correct? I mean, somebody couldn't open up a delivery service from their home, right? Or something like that. If it's a single family residence, somehow, I don't know if there are any residences in any of these 2 zonings. I think in the Riverside one there is. Could somebody open up a delivery service and use a home address?
So just one clarification, brick and mortar typically is a term referred to for like a retail storefront. So that wouldn't be what would be referring to as, these uses. So these are delivery offices. So office is a use that's defined both under the planning ordinance as a land use. So there's certain zones where you can have offices. So you can establish offices in all these zones. There are existing residential buildings within some of these zones. And that's where we get into building code occupancy type issues. So you would have to go through a building permit process to change a residence into basically a business or mercantile occupancy. And at that point, that's a building code review that then planning would get involved in and would have to make a determination about whether that residential building was appropriately sited and designed to accommodate an office use. But it would be an office use like everything else. Now, as we go through the CUP process, there's a number of additional security requirements that kick in that are required by both the state and local codes that they also have to meet as part of their tenant improvement building permit process. So I think it's not a yes or no answer in terms of can an existing house be converted into an office, but there is a process to determine whether it makes sense on a case-by-case basis.
All right. And I think you touched on this already. Some of the challenges that I was thinking of is you mentioned outside delivery services that come into our city. How is that monitored and how do we make sure the city is able to collect the tax dollars on that? Right. So I think that's the challenge I think the city's going to have for quite some time, don't you think?
It is a challenge, and it's something we're working on. I think these ordinances changes and the update to the global policy potentially would all help to inform exactly how we're going to better deal with that in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. No more other questions. No questions.
A couple questions. One that comes to mind. I mean, I too listened to the forum, workshop, whatever we call that, and it was helpful to hear the diversity of opinions. But why are we not able to have the survey results yet? I mean, that would be very helpful as well.
Yeah, so the city has been conducting a survey. It was an online survey. We just haven't completed the results. We do expect that those will be available for the council meeting on October, I think, 6th it is. So that once they're fully completed and prepared, they'll be presented at the city council meeting, and then they'll be available for the public and the planning commission to see at that time.
Okay, and there was a couple of references. A couple of references in the staff report to expedite this ordinance. Could you explain to me that meant urgency? Is there some urgency that I'm?
Yeah, that came out of the July 19th city council meeting. And that was basically a study session where they were providing direction to staff in terms of moving forward with the overall policy. Some of the testimony that was received during that workshop indicated that if you were operating outside the city limits, you were not limited to the medical marijuana restriction. You could deliver basically recreational cannabis. So if your office is located outside the city, you can deliver recreational cannabis legally within the city. But if your office is located within the city, you could only deliver medical marijuana, which put the local operators at a disadvantage and competing with the outside operators. So the city council believed that that was something that should be taken care of sooner rather than later, and directed staff to move forward with this change.
I can understand that part, but could there also be a rush for those outside people to move their businesses into our corridor?
Well, they'd have to go through the CUP process and the building permit process, which is time consuming. And if they're already operating from outside, they already have an office. You only need one office to deliver as far as you can drive, basically. So we don't expect that that would be the outcome of this change.
Yeah, and I guess I just ask, and it comes back to, I think, Commissioner Jorgensen's about saturation, how to measure that. Businesses. I know I heard from the forum a whole, wide spectrum of support for greater access to concern about gateway. So a whole spectrum, and some of it had to do with concern. And so I guess what was the word we used in terms of oversaturation? How could we measure that?
And it's a policy decision. Potentially that could be one of the recommendations, if you move this forward to the city council, would be to ask the city council to clarify, what would be the thresholds for overconcentration.
All right, at this time, do I have any other council or any other commissioner questions? Yes.
Is it this, as I understand it, the city council asked for this matter to be expedited to support the two businesses already in the city.
Correct.
But it has been written way beyond that. Is it possible for the commission to be supportive of those two businesses, but to be able to wait till we have the survey? I mean, we're voting on something without seeing the survey. We don't know what it said. And from what I heard of the workshop, I don't think it was clear to the public that there were going to be two items, that this item was being heard tonight. In fact, the timeline at the workshop, the timeline slide said the next step was October City Council. So I'm not comfortable that the public is, by large, is understanding there's two different things. And if we were asked to expedite those two businesses, I'd be super supportive of that. But I don't think we have the information that the city has requested from the community. We ask their opinion, and then we're not waiting to hear what it is. So I'm unclear on that.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Frace, this is a change to the cannabis regulations and changing the definition from marijuana to cannabis gets it more in line. So it brings it more to the state guidelines for cannabis. I know the state allows local jurisdictions to make their own rules, but I guess what I'm getting at is that if we were to approve this tonight, there's nothing stopping the council in their October meeting to change it back if the community were to make further adjustments to these regulations to be more in line with what the council and or community feels they'd like to see Paso Robles.
So there are a lot of changes proposed, but I think from the city attorney's office opinion, that's kind of like the bare minimum, even though it's numerous pages and lots of definition changes, that's the bare minimum that you have to do just to accommodate the request for the 2 local businesses to deliver recreational cannabis. In terms of what the council can do moving forward, there's a box in terms of how far they can go beyond, what's been noticed and what the planning commission is looking at tonight. So they like you can make minor tweaks and changes, but they couldn't make wholesale additions to what's proposed. So, this is really about just modifying what's allowed to be delivered from within the city limits, and that would be the limit of what the council could take up, which is more limited than what we expect the community-wide cannabis discussions to be.
Sure. So I guess my question was, and I'm sorry it wasn't clear, is that after those community forums, after the council future meeting, can the council adjust what they approve or what we are recommending for approval and they approve, if they approve it at their next meeting or meeting soon?
No, that's another process, another ordinance is going to come through.
Okay.
So all that's on the table is just the delivery office definition. That's all the council's going to be able to deal with. They are simultaneously and likely maybe at the same city council meeting also going to be giving further direction on the global policy. So it is a 2-track process that can be confusing to all that are involved. But there's a whole nother set of policies and ordinances that have to come back through the city attorney's office, planning commission, staff, city council, hearings, notices, and all that sort of thing. So I don't know if that helps or doesn't, but
what we are proving this evening is already happening in our community, except for those 2 CUPs that have been approved and those businesses currently operating.
yes. So delivery operations located outside of city limits are legally allowed to deliver recreational cannabis within city limits. Those 2 offices, delivery offices that are located within the city limits are not. They're only limited to medical marijuana deliveries.
And what we're being asked tonight is to just change the cannabis regulations to sort of put them all in one basket.
That would be the primary outcome of all the changes, even though there's pages and pages of changes. That's really all that significantly changes.
So again, essentially what we're doing this evening, even though there were pages and pages of changes, is allowing those currently operating within the city limits to do commercial.
That is staff's interpretation of the likely outcome of this process.
I'd like to jump in there because I have some questions and I don't know how to ask it exactly, so bear with me. But I guess it's a process thing, and I'm wondering, it seems like we're being asked to recommend ordinance. And implicit in that is that we're supporting greater access to cannabis, and that's not, I'm not there. You know, I kind of need more community input to know if that's what it wants.
And Commissioner, it's Isaac. I just wanted to jump in here. I know we're still sort of, it's a complex item, and so there are lots of questions for staff. But I do want to ensure too we solicit the input from the public before
We
sort
can
of
do
moving
that.
into the next phase. Yeah.
Okay, that's great, Isaac. Are you ready? Yeah. All right, I would like to open up the public hearing on this matter, and if you could please come forward and introduce yourself by name and address, please do.
Hello, my name is Grace Hall. I'm the owner of Dub's Green Garden. We've been in operation since 2012. We've been licensed since 2019. We currently are located on Black Oak Drive. We own our real estate there. And I know it's a little confusion about exactly what's being asked for, but we're licensed to sell medical only amongst, I don't know, at least 20 other delivery services that come all the way from as far as LA and San Francisco to deliver recreationally here. So recreational marijuana is available here all day, every day. We're just not allowed to felicitate those deliveries. We get at least 30 to 50 calls a day for delivery. I can see maybe 3 of those people because they have to have a doctor's recommendation, which is almost obsolete now in the industry. And medical can deliver, we're allowed to sell to 18 to 21-year-olds. Recreational is 21 and up. So a lot of people have fears of cannabis, but they don't understand we are allowed to sell to the 18 to 21-year-old age group. We have had no issues. There's been no complaints against us. We've been operating in compliance the whole time we've been licensed, but we are being put at a significant financial disadvantage. Myself and then also Lucky, who's the other operational delivery service in this town, it's significantly impacting our businesses. And we are asking the commission to please consider this because it's impacting your local cannabis delivery services that are operating from Paso. Everybody else can come in and freely deliver. You're collecting the tax revenue from them, I'm assuming, but you're not getting much from us because we don't have any customers. And so that's simply what we're asking for the change to be made. And that's the urgency because we're business owners like any other business owner in town. And we're trying to survive and that's what we're trying to do. So I just would hope you could understand where we're coming from. It's been a significant investment to get where we're at. And we're just trying to survive. So.
All right, thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. And if anyone else would like to comment on this item, please come forward. How about online? Do you have anyone on?
Yes, we do have a caller online. Sunny, I'm going to go ahead and put you through. Just a moment. Sunny, can you hear us?
I can.
Go ahead.
Oh, good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Sunny Mulinax. I am with Kinfolk Holistics at 2805 Black Oak Drive. And I wanted to touch on a couple bases. I know we can all giggle at this, but when the state launched medical marijuana, they made some mistakes. And I'm a stage 4 colon cancer survivor. I believe that medical marijuana should have given cancer patients and other patients tax breaks. They should have allowed them to more medical products. And the medical card should be an actual medical card for the recommendation. What's happened since then is that the medical cards are a joke. You literally have a website that you go on, you pay $39.99, and within 5 minutes you have it's called a medical rec card. This has become a rite of passage for 18-year-olds. So they can get a medical card, and it's easy for them. They also, when the state rolled out medical, they rolled it out so a medical patient could purchase up to a half pound of flour. They can purchase up to 8 grams of concentrate, and it's just excessive. What adult use, even though adult use and recreational sounds like this evil thing, it actually is far more controlled. And so when you say adult use recreational, a person has to be 21 years old. They pay the full taxes just like the medical, but they're only allowed to have up to an ounce of flour at a time, which is minimal, and 8 grams of concentrate. So it's a much more controlled. It's much better than what medical came out as, and they're the same products. A medical patient and a recreational patient are purchasing the exact same products. There is no difference. So I asked the Planning Commission to truly look at adult use and medical. It's also more, we have, sometimes there's 6 businesses delivering to Paso Robles. I've seen 20 within 20 businesses. The County of San Luis Obispo allows for mobile delivery. So we have businesses right outside of Templeton that are coming into the city. They're not paying taxes to the city. And so that just needs to be remedied. I also wanted to touch on the land use a little bit. The California state, when we're looking at land use, they have laws protecting sensitive uses, and a cannabis business may not be closer than 600 feet to schools and school programs. And within, one of the commissioners had brought up a really good question: could this be in someone's home? So the state law prohibits cannabis businesses within 300 feet, lot line to lot line, from a residential area. And of course, the city has ultimate control, and they can waive that distance, but it's a really good starting point. Cities can also do something on the other side of it, and they can expand those sensitive use zones. So if we really truly don't want it even remotely next to a residence, they could say 1,000 feet lot line to lot line, or 1,000 feet for churches or schools. So there's some really good already measures in place for land use through the state, and the cities can add to them, which is great. I did want to just make on the over-concentration of an area. Grover Beach, when they launched it in 2017, they had their discussions. They first licensed in 2018. And they actually used their industrial zone, had been just blighted. Businesses were really just storing vehicles and things of that nature. And they went ahead and used that for their cannabis zone. And all of a sudden they had a complete economic boom into their kind of blighted zone. And you can see the dispensaries have been great. The city management and leadership of the community and the police chief had come out and said that there hadn't been any issues. So it's a really good example to look at how other cities have rolled out cannabis. And thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Do we have any other callers?
No, that was it.
Okay. All right, so I will then close the public hearing if no one else has any comments, and I'll bring it back to commission. And so let me start with you, Ty. Any comments?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm understanding from Warren the simplicity of this change, and just off the top, I'm in favor of this particular change. I'm hoping that it's going to allow a greater flexibility in the hands of the city council to basically regulate what will be coming before them, this will be a tool that they can allow to use to limit the amount of, or if any, retail and lounge type use. So to me, this would be the preferred method that I would, as a resident of the city, I would hope that one, these businesses that have established themselves here and have a good record, that they could compete with these companies, like they said, that are sitting right outside our city limits. To me, that's a big part of it that I think we will benefit from. But more importantly, I really want to emphasize that I'm hoping the city council really takes a look at this as the solution to what has been proposed for future use. And I think that going beyond this would be a mistake. So I feel that this gives them the tool that they need to allow and control the type of use that we want to see in this city. Even though we don't have the survey, I have been out in the public and discussed this with many citizens of the city, all various types of some people that use cannabis and some people that don't. So I just wanted to put my thoughts in for that, and I'll kind of reserve any further comments, but thank you.
Thank you, Ty. I'll go to Commissioner Covarrubias.
You know, I find it interesting. First off, I'm in big favor of leveling the playing field for our two existing cannabis delivery businesses. I find it interesting that you need a medical card for 18 to 21. I don't think that's going to change at all, even with this change. To level the playing field and allow the recreational piece, 21 and over, okay, I think that's fine. 21, you're an adult. 18, technically you're an adult, I guess. But I know for a fact that it is really, really easy to get a card. I know multiple people that have gotten them literally exactly how they explained. So I just find it interesting that I don't know how the city can address that part of it, because I do find it, I don't want to say troubling, but I mean, you got 18 and 19-year-olds that I think are abusing it. And that's just my own personal comment. I think that's a bigger problem that we have. It's not the 21, 25 recreational user. So I am in favor of the change. I think we do need to level the playing field for especially the two existing ones. I just think the city council and our city as a whole has a really big challenge going forward on this topic. Yeah, it's going to be a long haul, but I'm in favor of it.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Jordan.
I too am in favor of leveling the playing field. I think that's the only right thing to do, and I would support that immediately. But that's not what this ordinance does. This ordinance does not put any limit on the number of future businesses of this type, and maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't, but we ask the public for their opinion, and then it's just, we're not polite enough to wait for them to answer. And I don't think, in process, I just don't think that's the way that the city needs to represent itself. So if there was a way to vote for our two existing companies to start tomorrow morning to deliver recreational cannabis, I would vote enthusiastically yes, but that's not what this does. And I think it's unfortunate that this was written. If that was the request from the city council, then this just went way beyond that and makes it much harder to support. And it's out of sequence to our public outreach process. So I'm really torn. It's really disturbing to me that it was made so complicated and it was made so far-reaching when the point, as I understand it, was to address our local business needs.
And
Yeah, I don't have as much or any issue with proposed changes. I'm not sure that it changes what can happen today, other than the existing businesses can deliver commercial. Today we have the process of a business coming in with a conditional use permit and doing a medical only. So that doesn't necessarily change as far as I understand it. They can, if we didn't pass, or if we didn't recommend approval and the council didn't approve it, that could still happen. So this just allows those local businesses that have gone through the process or are going to go through the process, the ability to deliver commercially within the city. So that's what I think I read in this proposal this evening. And then I did notice on page 97 and attachment 3, let's see, section 21.33.060 B3, all cannabis delivery services. I think we left off an S potentially. But other than that, from what I read, that was the only typo, but I'm sure I missed a couple. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, Warren, I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask a question. So why couldn't we, as a commission, if we all agreed, why couldn't we agree to the change just for the 2 businesses that currently exist and then wait for the public opinion and the surveys and all of that other part? I mean, I know it's just a recommendation to the council anyways, and they could certainly change that, I would assume, but it's not what staff is recommending. But could we just make the recommendation in favor of just the 2 existing businesses for now to help them compete until we get our hands wrapped around this some more, or the council does?
So this is a zoning code change, and that's got to apply equally and fairly to anybody and everyone. So writing a zoning code specifically for 2 businesses probably doesn't pass a number of tests. And Isaac, do you want to weigh in on that at all?
Yeah, I think the goal was to allow to follow council direction and allow a temporary authorization, but to Warren's point, to ensure by doing so, the zoning code wasn't going to open up a broader sort of flood of applications without acknowledging sort of the scope with respect to the entitlement or lack thereof that would be required for our existing businesses, and putting in other safeguards to ensure that by doing so as part of a zoning code amendment, the city wouldn't sort of have unintended consequences where other businesses could come in and seek to take advantage of the same authorization.
I haven't weighed in here. You know, it is a zoning code change. I'm like the rest of you. We could just let our 2 existing businesses start selling. They've proven their credibility, which is really important to me. And I think their credibility was tested when we went through the medicinal permit process, conditional use permit process. So I like the idea of a level the playing field, but I do think this zoning code change we're talking about is talking about potentially increasing access to cannabis, which I don't have enough community support to document, but what I heard in the forum is there's a lot of concern about it. And so that zoning change can open up the access. I'm concerned about you. So I'm really perplexed. I don't quite know what to do with this. I think I'm just feeling uncomfortable that I don't have more community input. I know there was a lot more than there is here tonight, and maybe there was the confusion on the process. I'm not sure. So, Isaac, did you have a comment?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I thought you had a comment.
I think that was Christensen.
Oh, okay. Ty, is that you?
No. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't want to interrupt you, so I wanted you to finish. I apologize. I wanted to kind of reiterate my thoughts on this and I understand, I think, all of my other commissioners' concerns. And the way I read this, and I understand that there's an implication that we're opening the door. Any other future delivery service still has to come back and get a CUP, still has to come back and go through the same process. And I understand the concern because the public input wasn't here for this particular change on the level that we're discussing for future uses like dispensaries, retail dispensaries, and lounges, which that brings up a whole other concern for myself. But in this case, I feel that we're actually, in my viewpoint, I'm in favor of this because I'm promoting a method by which I think the city should make practice of, and not the other avenues. And I want these local businesses, these couple local businesses to succeed, because I want them to be a model for how it can be managed and controlled, and not in your face type approach. For me, that's the way I see this. And I feel like we're supporting that by making the recommendation to the city council that we understand that this is a complicated issue. And this is a step that maybe, as Commissioner Jorgensen said, I wish we could all just do this for the two businesses. And I fully agree with that. But knowing that this is an ordinance that we can't, but I feel like if we make the recommendation and we put it on the record how we feel that the process should take place, the public has had an opportunity to comment on this particular one, maybe not to the level of the others, but I do believe that this, to me, this is a more important aspect of the type of promotion that I would like to see the city follow, and not as what's being discussed in these workshops and amongst the public. So I hope I made myself clear on that.
Okay, thank you, Ty. Any other comments or ideas?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Is there a potential that we could readdress this after the public information is received?
So option 3 would be to refer it back to staff. So I think that would basically be what you're talking about, refer it back to staff until more information is available or more information can be provided. So I think that could be a motion that's made.
And I would just note on the record, in terms of the recommendation to City Council under the zoning code, the Planning Commission under the Government Code holds a public hearing. They can make their written recommendation, and it can be approval. It can be approval with conditions. I know Planning's done a good job of laying those out here. And it could also be, a recommendation to deny based on specific factors. So there are options, certainly, in terms of what that recommendation following a public hearing looks like.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move to approve draft resolution A, recommending the City Council adopt ordinance to be numbered later to amend Chapter 21.33 of Title 21 of the El Paso de Robles Municipal Code regarding commercial cannabis use.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second is from Christensen. Motion from Commissioner Neal, and discussion. Hearing none, then let's call for the vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
No, because of process.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Aye.
Chairperson Davis.
No, because of process.
Okay, motion passes 3-2.
All right, thank you. And let's see here, we will move forward to discussion items. Item H.
There are no discussion items tonight.
Okay, gotcha. And the consent calendar. So we have the Development Review Committee minutes for approval and the Planning Commission minutes for approval. Should we do those together or separately?
You can do them together if you wish.
Okay. Do I have any comments or do I have a motion for approval?
I move that we accept the items 4 and 5 under the Development Review Committee minutes and the Planning Commission minutes.
All right.
As they are.
Commissioner Christensen has made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rubius. And any discussion on that? And hearing none, call for the vote.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias?
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Chairperson Davis?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so we go to other reports. Paso Robles Street Landscape Ad Hoc Committee report.
Yeah, we had a meeting last week with the committee, reviewed overall input from stakeholders, which are the different property owners and businesses within the district. The committee determined that the next step would be to conduct the ad hoc charrette process with staff. That's laid out in the committee's work program. So we're looking for dates in, I believe, early October for that session. So that would be the next step. And then they'll probably be ready to report back some information and suggest next steps to both the commission and council.
Okay. Any questions on that, Commissioner? All right, go to the Housing Constraints and Opportunities Committee.
Yeah, so we're getting to a point where we're going to be ready to report back to both the Housing Constraints Committee and the Planning Commission on zoning code. So the consultant and staff have been working very hard to get to a point where we have a draft that's ready for some sort of input and review. So we expect that the Housing Constraints Committee will be looking at basically a summary of changes to some of the key sections of the code in early October, and then we expect by the end of October to bring a similar report back to the Planning Commission. So we're kind of still at the issues and options level, so it'll be kind of high-level policy type changes. There's been some reordering to the ordinance. There's some different definitions, things like that. So I think we intend for the commission to have kind of a high-level discussion of some of those items, but you'll also be getting the strike-through and underlined version of the global changes, which will be very voluminous. We don't expect you to get into that detail, but that information will be available if there's certain sections, that you're interested in. So it'll be a big picture discussion, but there'll be a lot of detail kind of, available if you want to get to that level as well.
And our body will be making a decision of what kind of time frame or not.
I think there's still a lot of work to be done. Our timeline is to adopt this in probably mid to late 2023. So this will be part of that process, but we're not close to the finish line yet.
All right. Yeah,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I anticipate that this reading will be incredibly scintillating and engaging. Would we have extra time, more than just the typical weekend, to review this? What I see is probably a cure for insomnia.
Yeah, so I think the majority of the review materials will be available at the Housing Constraints Committee, which will be about 2 weeks before Planning Commission. So that should give you nearly 3 weeks of review time if you really want to read every page.
I am on that.
So exciting.
Anyway. All right, and
I can't wait.
And item 8, Development Review Committee rotation schedule. Are we good with that? Looks like I'm starting up in October here soon.
I just wanted to say thank you, Commissioner Covarrubias. I really appreciate you coming in like that for me in the last minute, and I'm sorry for staff for making it work so hard.
Okay. Any changes needing to be made in October that you can anticipate at this time? I guess we'll have another opportunity next week to talk about it. All right, we'll go to Planning Commissioner comments. I'll go to you, Commissioner.
No other comments.
All right, I'll go to Commissioner Jorgensen. Commissioner Neal.
No comments.
How about you, Commissioner Christensen?
No, I just, not really any comments, and just want to say one general thing. I want to thank everybody for their input on all the issues tonight, especially the last one. I know that's a touchy one, so I appreciate it.
Sounds good, and I don't have any comments for tonight as well. Thank you for the comment, Ty. Staff comments.
Yeah, update on a couple items. So you'll recall that the Planning Commission approved the Commons project. That was that large industrial project on Wisteria. We have received an appeal on that item that is being scheduled for hearing next week at City Council. So that council report should be out by the end of the week, so you might want to keep track of that. We also have some additional industrial projects. So there's a lot of interest in industrial development, basically on Wisteria and Airport Road. So I think there's 3 or 4 other projects that staff's diligently working on that we expect to have come before the Planning Commission in the next few months or so. So be aware of that. The Sky River RV expansion that came to Planning Commission was sent back for some rework. It's been to DRC. Looks like that's probably going to be coming back in the future for a Planning Commission hearing it yet again. Boys School Landing Project, that EIR continues to move forward. We had to do some significant reworking on some of the technical sections, but we're getting pretty close on that. We do expect that that will be available for public review this fall and likely be ready for hearings first quarter of 2023. So I know we haven't heard much or seen much of that project for a while now, but it is still there and it's moving along, and it'll be back sooner rather than later. And at the same time, out there on the 46 East Corridor, Caltrans and the city are partnering on the basically new Airport Road overcrossing, which is basically where Union Road and Barney Schwartz Park is. That also requires an environmental review process. That environmental review document's been in process for 5 or 6 years now. We're hopeful that by the end of this calendar year, that'll be available for public review. That has a lot of the same issues that are identified in the landing EIR. So I would expect that both those environmental documents will be out for review around the end of the year. So just be aware that's going to be going on. And then let's see, finally, SLOCOG. SLOCOG is a San Luis Obispo County Council of Governments. They basically are the overseers of all of these state and federal transportation funds. So all the funding of Caltrans, road projects, that sort of thing is all allocated by SLOCOG. So SLOCOG is a major organization in the county. One of their missions this year is to look into traffic safety and how to improve overall traffic safety on roads and highways within the county. So they are putting together basically a task force. There'll be a major conference, basically a multi-day event in San Luis Obispo, probably in October, I believe. They are looking for delegates basically from each city to come to represent community issues. So SLOCOG has asked for appointments from the city. So I am offering that up to the Planning Commission if any of the planning commissioners would be interested in basically attending and kind of representing local community views. And, you know, I don't need a commitment tonight, but if that is something of interest, I'll send out some information just as an email. And if you're interested, let me know, and we can definitely get you involved in that process.
Hey, Warren, this is Commissioner Christensen. I do have one question for you. On your comments on the landing, I've seen some advertising for phase 2 on the landing just recently. Have they changed the process for their submission? Are they moving for phase 2 first, or has anything changed in that regard that you can comment on?
Nope. From staff's understanding, they're still interested in phase 1 being that large distribution warehouse use. So that's staff's understanding, but there could be other information that staff's not aware of.
Thank you.
I do have one question. Spaceport update.
So there's a lot of activity going on with Spaceport. I think we've got you on a 6-month update schedule. So I do know that Paul Sloan, our economic development manager, is scheduled to come back and report back to the Planning Commission specifically on Spaceport. So I'll check and see exactly when that's scheduled, but we do intend to give you an update on it.
One other question. I drew the line. How do I undo that? Use your white line. I know you can't see it on that screen, but there you go.
Nobody,
I did that, yeah.
nobody knows how that works.
Okay. Just wondering. So can I have, do we have anything else? Can I call for an
I
adjournment?
think Darren
Oh,
has
Darren, there
something
you are. So
exciting to
sorry.
tell
Yeah,
you.
do you have any comments?
I just want to acknowledge, I know the commission asked for staff to bring back kind of a discussion and some information on code enforcement. So I just want to let you know it is on our radar. We will take a look at the upcoming agendas and see if we can bring back a discussion on that. So just want to let you know that it is on the radar. We haven't forgotten about it.
Perfect. Okay, and I will.
Oh, what? I apologize, Chairperson Davis. One last question, Warren, or for staff. What's the timeline? Did council already vote on the STR changes? I don't know if I missed that. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, that was approved by the council, and that the new ordinance is in effect, so there is no sunset date any longer. So the short-term rental policy basically will run indefinitely.
Thank you.
Can I please have a motion for adjournment? Thank you so much. Well, welcome, Mark.